How long has it been since I'd been thrown into this damn forest? A week? 2? A month? And how did they expect me of all people to find some way to control this? A high concrete and steel wall surrounds the nature preserve, meant to contain whatever is in here. I've seen no live animals around, heard no bird calls, not even the footprints or droppings of any predator. I cough again, staining my hand in black fluid. Great, now it's got me. I rub my palm on my dirty pants and pick up the pace. The light of the rising sun glows on the red conifer needles high overhead. The trees seem to watch me as I march back into the depths of the park. A trail marker hangs from the trunk of one of the trees, and I see the beaten path left by hikers in the past. Red triangle. This path leads back to the small cabin where I'd set myself up a few weeks ago. I'd been sent into this quarantined park to investigate what was going on with the wildlife. Before the walls were put up, people had reported hearing the birds singing strangely, animals walking with irregular gaits, and unidentifiable sounds coming from deep within the forest. When I got sent in here, there were no animals at all, and the towering evergreens were already slowly turning a vivid red. The bark had turned gray, and the trees crackled and creaked in the wind, sounding dry and stiff. But that made no sense. There was no heat wave, and it had rained a few times recently. The ground was still moist. The trees weren't drinking. Something is affecting every living thing in this park, including me. I need to find out what's going on and how to stop it. At least that's what they said when they tossed my ass in here without a team. I have no crew, no real lab, not even any solid idea what I'm dealing with. They let me bring only what I could fit into a backpack, a microscope, and a few test kits. All I know is what I've learned from a few samples I've taken from the trees in the past few days. The bark is dry, but the canopies are filled with some kind of fluid, just not water. Something screams in the distance. I've been hearing it sparsely since I got here. It sounds like no animal I know of. Too shrill to be a mountain lion, way too harsh to be any kind of bird that lives here, and much, much too long. No creature in this region cries out for this long, or even can for this long. Whatever that thing is, I have no interest in finding it anytime soon. At last, the noise stops. The sound came from the same direction as always, telling me that the source isn't moving. At least I hope it's not moving. The cabin comes into view. The treated log walls are a welcome contrast to the gray and red trees surrounding the space. Empty picnic tables and benches sat scattered around the clearing. The empty bit of familiarity in this surreal space is an eerie reminder that things are dreadfully wrong with this forest, and that I'm completely alone. I head inside to surround myself with properly colored wood and give myself a little bit of comfort. All I could figure out from what I observed is that whatever affected this place is some kind of virus or bacteria. What kind, I can't tell. The samples I took from the trees are filled with layers of strange cells that don't belong to them. Definitely foreign. The cells in the samples don't seem to do anything at all. I need to get a sample from something other than a tree to get a definitive observation. I've tried looking at other plants, but the foreign cells behave the same as in the trees. I need an animal. There's been no animal sighting since I came here, so how the hell am I going to get a fauna sample? The screaming. It must have come from some kind of animal. Trees don't make noises like that. But I don't want to go anywhere near that thing. I suppose I count as fauna. There's a first aid kit in my backpack with a small scalpel. I scrub my hands and arms as well as I can in the small bowl of water I boiled that morning. Opting to just bite the bullet, I pull it out and take the pain as I surgically cut a thin sample of my skin from my forearm. Once I'm done, I clench my hand and stare at the neat square of slight pink where I took the sample from. The veins that I can see through my skin are a sickly black color. I can't bear the irritation, so I pull salve out of the kit, spread it over the wound, and bandage my arm. Now that that's dealt with, I place the sample of my own skin under the microscope. Surely enough, more of the same foreign cells are hiding sandwiched between the skin cells, only these are active. They act slowly, but as the temperature in the sample drops, They start to move around more, seeming to thrive in dead tissue. They don't appear to be doing anything other than moving around, pushing between skin cells, and meandering in oddly uniform patterns. Then they start acting even more strangely upon reaching the edge of the sample. More cells begin to form. But these new cells weren't duplicates of them like mitosis should produce. They were making new skin cells. Then came another type of cell, also not the same as the foreign ones. Then another. Then the sample twitched. I jumped backward and hit my back against the other table. From where I stand now, I can still see the sample moving on its own. It's only twitching now, but the implication is nightmare-inducing. The foreign cells are building a new organism out of the infected tissue. This becomes much clearer as I observe the square of skin wriggle out of the microscope and thicken up with visible musculature. The scientific side of my mind is fascinated by this development, but the survivor in me is mortified. And to make matters worse, a new question arises. If these microbes build new organisms out of dead tissue, what happened to the animals that lived in this preserve? At least this kind of explains why the trees are starving themselves. The infection is forcing them to stop all natural processes. But why haven't they grown into anything new? The answer to this becomes apparent some moments later. I watch with sick interest as the skin square creeps off the microscope base, down the stand, and onto the table. It finds its way to one of my bark samples resting nearby. Red tendrils grow from the skin and dig into the bark, pulling and cracking it into a segmented shell. The sample grows rigid extensions like bones. Muscles grow around them, quickly covered up by skin, and then with new instances of bark. I've seen enough. I consider killing this thing but stop myself with the sudden realization that it would probably just regrow. Unless... I tear through a few of the cabin's drawers until I find a box of matches. Pity the stupid thing chose to use dry bark as a shell. The sample writhed in agony as it was cooked alive in its own shell. Once the fire died, I watched and waited to see if it moved again. Over an hour passed and nothing happened. At least now I know what this infection does and how to kill it. Matter of fact, I probably should kill it now. This forest is full of dried-up trees that will burn easily. Sure, it may get out of hand, but it'll be worth it to keep this infection from spreading. This thing cannot get loose. I take the box of matches and inspect the contents. 4 left. I only need 1. I head outside, clutching them in my hands. The screaming returns from the forest, and it's louder now. Closer. Come closer. A new sound in the back of my head, deep between my ears, mixes with the rustling in the canopies. Join us! It echoes again, the voice sounding more omnipresent, coming from every direction at once. The microbes, the ones inside me, they're in my head, in my skull, speaking to me. I don't know how, but they're speaking to me. Become one. The source of the screaming arrives. Before me, framed against the red of the conifer's needles, is what looks like the entire animal population of the park, melded into an abomination, covered in a dry bark shell. Hundreds of heads have melted into one, with birds and their elongated beaks serving as teeth. Long, sturdy limbs extend from its sides, ending in asymmetrical messes of claws and hooves. Deep red veins and cracks mark the edges where the skin of one creature fails to fade into the skin of another. I stagger backward, the matches in my hand forgotten for a moment as I lay eyes on this horrific thing. Then, I remember my plan and hurry to the base of one of the dead trees. Kicking a pile of loose needles and pine cones together, I crouch and light the match. It sputters and goes out, and I drop it before grabbing the next. This one flares to life, and I lower it into the dry tinder. The pine needles catch, and the flames spread quickly. The thing screams again, but it's too late for it. Too late for me, too, but at least the infection will not spread beyond the park boundaries. The fire would burn for weeks.